I have to use this. Ladies and gentlemen, may I invite you to take your seats, please? Ladies and gentlemen, dear colleagues, let us resume our work. As you know, extraordinary circumstances led us yesterday to suspend our session. Indeed, in close coordination with both UN headquarters and national security and safety authorities, we deemed wise to do so for the sake of the members of our committee, as well as for all state parties to our convention. Let me inform you that all constitutional mechanisms are in place in Turkey. The public order is restored in best terms. As a result of our meticulous efforts yesterday, tighter security measures were taken here, at and around our premises, even in the absence of activity of our committee and presence of its members. Protection is fully operational and doubled in number as of today. I thank so many members and state parties that have displayed full trust on security while they were also showing solidarity with Turkey after recent developments. However, despite vigorous security measures undertaken and that full normality prevails all over the country, in light of security instructions of UN headquarters we received yesterday, we understand this intergovernmental committee is not able to complete its work as it is planned. Subsequently, we, as host country, have been told by UN officers and UNESCO Secretariat, reportedly in consultation with Director General Bokova, to resume our work as of now and conclude it as soon as possible by the end of this very day. During our last session today, we are therefore invited to complete the items on our agenda as much as we can. Dear delegates, ladies and gentlemen, please also note that Minister of Culture and Tourism of Turkey, Mr. Nabi Avcı, who is the official host of this committee meeting, will be present to deliver a speech this afternoon at around 3 o'clock. In case you have questions regarding the new state of play on requirements in rescheduling your flights and your accommodation, I kindly refer you to our official webpage. Thank you very much. It was decided at the Bureau that our session today will be limited, as I said, to a limited number of items, and the 40th session will end tonight. Please note in this regard that we will have only 1 hour lunch break from 1 to 2 p.m. Concerning the progress of work of the committee, please note that it is proposed to pursue and complete examination of item 8B. I recall that we will resume with the examination of the nomination of the USA, which debate was initiated on Friday. Ladies and gentlemen, before moving to the USA's nomination, I would like to remind you that we will have a very limited time to allocate to each nomination. I would therefore urge the members of the committee to facilitate the work as much as possible in order to finish this item today. Therefore, unless committee members oppose the inscription of the site or have an amendment to the draft decision, I will proceed with the examination of the draft decision immediately after the presentation by the advisory bodies. I trust that you all agree with this procedure. Dear colleagues, at the closure of item 8B, it is proposed to go directly to the agenda item 17 concerning the next session. In this regard, allow me to recall that we received an invitation from Poland to host the 41st session of the committee in 2017. Due to the current circumstances, we will not be able to complete the agenda of the 40th session as planned, as I said. Therefore, if you agree, I will suggest that the committee meets again in the very near future in Paris to examine the remaining agenda items of our 40th session as follows: 7, 7A, 8C, 8D, 8E, 9A, 10A, 10B, 11, 12, 13A, 13B, 14, 15. Please note that the days of this meeting, this extraordinary session, will be fixed and communicated by the Secretariat as soon as possible. Now I would like to give the floor to Madame Rösler.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair, and thank you for your words, and we certainly will communicate the continuation of this 40th session as soon as possible. As discussed in the Bureau, I would like to make a brief announcement on interpretation. You will have interpretation in English and French, and Spanish will be only provided passive, which means that you can actually speak in Spanish, but you won't hear the interpretation in Spanish. And I also would like to inform you that we have no Arabic today. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Madame Rösler. Now I would like to read the list of speakers in front of me concerning the nomination of United States of America, Finland, Turkey, Cuba, Kuwait, Peru, Lebanon, Kazakhstan, Portugal. Korea, Poland. Korea, Poland. Lebanon is on the list, but he's asking for... May I ask Lebanon if it is about the nomination or the general? Okay. Thank you very much. So I will continue with the list of speakers. Representative of Finland, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chairperson. And before I give the floor to my expert colleague, I would briefly like to regret the tragic events and the loss of lives, and we give our support to the democratically elected government of Turkey to restore security, democracy and rule of law. And of course we are, and we still are, concerned about the security, and we have had contacts of course with the Secretariat, and we of course register what you just said in the beginning in your statement. Thank you very much.
Then we go straight to the point. Frank Lloyd Wright's work has had a profound effect on the development of modern architecture, including the Finnish architect Alvar Aalto. In Wright's buildings, visionary organic architecture was developed to be in the service of modern life. The nominated site includes 10 buildings by Wright. It raises many questions, as the justifications are based on very general attributes, and the text concerning the individual buildings are mainly descriptive and not particularly analytical. How the sites convey the ideas and facets of Frank Lloyd Wright's work remain partly unclear to us. The discussions with the representatives of the State Party have showed us that there might be a will to modify the nomination, thus to include only 4 buildings of the original nomination dozen. No matter which approach the state party will choose, the revised nomination would need to be addressed in one of the forthcoming sessions of the committee. Finland supports Lebanon and Portugal's view to refer the nomination back to the state party. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Ambassador, for your kind words of solidarity with Turkey. Representative of Turkey.
Thank you, Madam Chair. We firstly congratulate the experts and specialists of State Party for the huge and immense work they have done for preparation of this challenging nomination, as well as ICOMOS for its technically satisfying evaluation. We also thank the State Party for bringing this nomination into the committee's agenda for 2 reasons. Firstly, we believe that the nomination would fill a gap in the list that we see today against the modern architecture. And secondly, this committee should give the already deserved places to the leading modern architects by appreciating their works on this prestigious list. However, we agree with ICOMOS on the argument that the potential outstanding universal value and the statements of integrity and authenticity could be better defined. Although the shared elements among the components are the talent, creativity, and innovative thinking of the architect himself, the link among the components needs to be defined independently from the architect. Bearing in mind that this is not a list of the architects, cultures, or civilizations, but the properties which are featured among their likes, the definition of OUV should be based upon the properties as a whole, through which the common attributes and contribution of each component to the OUV are readable. We definitely cannot ignore the place of right in modern architecture, but we believe that the files falling short in defining the OUV for the series is stemming from the selection of components. In our view, for example, the idea and approach of the architect behind the Guggenheim Museum and the Price Tower is completely different than those he applied to other components to the series. Therefore, there is a need for reconsidering the selection criteria for serial. Considering these issues together with the requirements of an active management system for the series as a whole, we support the recommendation of ICOMOS as well as the recommendation of delegation of Lebanon. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you very much. Now I give the floor to the representative of Cuba.
Gracias, señora presidenta. En primer lugar, queremos solidarizarnos con el pueblo y gobierno turco ante los difíciles sucesos sucedidos. Con relación a esta nominación y haciendo uso racional de la palabra como usted nos ha pedido, simplemente quisiera soportar, a partir de las intervenciones realizadas el viernes, la inmensa influencia de la obra de Lloyd Wright en la arquitectura mundial y ser un referente, sobre todo a partir de estas obras seleccionadas y que creo que además se centran de modo muy claro en la modificación de la serie, es decir, su reducción a 4 obras. Creo que queda claramente definido de que son obras con un valor universal excepcional y que están plenamente justificadas tanto como obras maestras como por la enorme influencia que han tenido en la arquitectura del movimiento moderno. Muchísimas gracias.
Thank you very much. Now I give the floor to the representative of Kuwait.
Thank you, Madam Chair. We want to express our happiness to see the nomination of modern heritage sites to the World Heritage List, which is underrepresented. With the knowledge that the state of Kuwait have given special attention to this kind of heritage by the adoption of the initiative of safeguarding for the heritage of the urban and architectural modernities and encourage the rest of the states parties to move forward to protect and to preserve this heritage. We understand the point of view of the advisory body which reported that some of the work submitted by the state party have been influential, and the point of view of our colleagues from Lebanon and Portugal. But no one can deny that the contribution of Lloyd Wright in the history of modern heritage and the change for better social and economic condition. Lloyd Wright is one of the pioneers in the first half of the 20th century with an innovative range of ideas for urban planning grouped under the broad acre city and which revealed his envisioned city of the future. The same party has provided some evidence of the work of friend Lloyd Wright, which include an important exchange of ideas and knowledge in the history of the development of modern architecture, as Marin County Civic Center in California, in which Eastern and Western cultures were synthesized in a space that touches the spiritual aspect of the experience of humanity. And this emphasizes the concept of modern heritage as a shared heritage in the world. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Representative of Peru, you have the floor.
Muchas gracias, señora presidenta. La delegación del Perú ha tomado debida nota que el Estado parte ha reducido el número de sitios para ser inscritos en el caso de la obra de Frank Lloyd Wright. Estamos ahora frente a un conjunto muy homogéneo de obras maestras de la arquitectura moderna, el Templo de la Unidad en Illinois, la Casa Roddy en Chicago, la Casa de la Cascada en Pensilvania y el Museo Solomon Guggenheim en New York. Yo quisiera, para relevar la importancia y significación de esta nominación, citar a Frank Lloyd Wright sobre su obra. Él señalaba que aquí estoy ante ustedes, predicando la arquitectura orgánica, declarando que el ideal moderno y la enseñanza tan necesaria si queremos ver el conjunto de la vida y servir ahora al conjunto de la vida sin anteponer ninguna tradición a la gran tradición, no exaltando ninguna forma fija sobre nosotros, sea pasada, presente o futura, sino exaltando las sencillas leyes del sentido común o del supersentido que determina la forma por medio de la naturaleza de los materiales, de la naturaleza del propósito, la forma que debe seguir a la función, pero que se expresan en una sola unidad. Lloyd en esta cita nos habla de el sentido común. Y pienso, señora presidenta, que el sentido común debe aconsejar al comité que no es posible rechazar la inscripción de la obra de uno de los más grandes arquitectos, de uno de los 4 más importantes arquitectos del siglo XX, del creador y promotor de la arquitectura orgánica. No es posible que lo hagamos porque las evaluaciones de la serie en términos comparativos no han sido lo suficientemente sólidos. Es como si tuviésemos en este momento la nominación de la obra de Picasso y que fundamentemos el rechazo porque las señoritas de Aviñón, los 3 músicos, La Vida y el Guernica no han sido suficientemente analizados como serie. No, creo que la obra de Lloyd en sí misma amerita de manera sumamente larga y significativa la inscripción en la lista del Patrimonio Mundial. Hemos hablado que el comité tiene una responsabilidad y si no inscribimos esta obra, creo que la opinión pública no lo podrá entender de ninguna manera. Gracias, señora presidenta.
Thank you very much. Representative of Lebanon, you have the floor.
Merci. Thank you, Mrs. Chair. Thank you, Mrs. Chair. The U.S. has presented a nomination with 10 components to cover the architectural works of Frank Lloyd Wright. The OUV of this work is obvious, but the problem lies in defining what makes this OUV. It is not only an academic question, since we have to know what are exactly the values we are inscribing in order to protect these values. If we inscribe a car, for example, we should know if we are inscribing its outstanding design, the revolutionary engine, or the environmental qualities. Noticing that it would be difficult to inscribe the series as a whole, the US delegation is proposing now to inscribe 4 individual buildings. It would be a shame when we know that the work of Frank Lloyd Wright is as important as that of Le Corbusier. It would be a shame to reduce the nomination to 4 buildings that would not cover the importance of this work. The committee had already decided to remove 1 or even 2 components in case of large series, but not transforming a nomination from a series covering an entire architectural work to only 4 individual monuments. The reason given to justify this not to revise the nomination is even worse. The US drawed the distinguished delegate of Burkina Faso to say that they don't have enough money to revise the nomination. On croit rêver, as we say in French. Maybe we should launch a donation among African and small countries to help the US revise their nomination dossier. Mrs. Chair, this committee session is followed by thousands on internet. Let's try to preserve as much as possible our credibility. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I give the floor to the representative of Kazakhstan. You have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Frank Lloyd Wright's bright, innovative approach brought huge influence on development of architecture of the first part of the 20th century. The delegation of the Republic of Kazakhstan supports the current position of the Distinguished State Party to inscribe 4 of the 10 previously proposed buildings that are in the nominations. 3 among chosen 4, Robbie House, Falling Water, and the Guggenheim Museum are highlighted in the ICOMOS evaluation. A 4th, Unity Temple, we believe, following explanations of the State Party, is also extremely important as a significant innovation in church architecture and one of the first examples of use of reinforced concrete in a monumental building. According to our experts, the selected objects for nomination demonstrate general principles of modern architecture declared by Frank Lloyd Wright, sufficient for justifying the overall OUV by criteria 1 and 2. In this regard, representatives of Kazakhstan opt for the inscription of this nomination on the World Heritage List at this session. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I give the floor to the representative of Portugal.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, and sorry to come back again to this issue. And of course, very sincere, I wish to express our very sincere solidarity with Turkish democracy. No, as I said before, it's not because you take out some elements that you give necessarily more coherence to what is left. Actually, the opposite could very easily happen. Addressing the very eloquent statement by my Peruvian colleague, we do not have any doubt, and I already mentioned, that Frank Lloyd Wright is one of the most outstanding architects of the 20th century, with Alvaro Aalto and with Le Corbusier, and with Niemeyer too. So we don't have any doubt about that. And taken individually, each of his pieces undoubtedly has enormous value and perhaps outstanding universal value. That is not the issue. And we are not comparing, Picasso, with all due respect, is not the relevant comparison here. The relevant comparison for me is with the next site, with what happened with the Corbusier process, where similar problems were detected, and it took more work to clarify and to give to this proposal, I mean the Le Corbusier proposal, the coherence it needed. So, Madam Speaker, we do not doubt that more than one element of the serial property has outstanding universal value, but the serial nomination should be more than the sum of its parts, and this must be better explained in a nomination as indicated by the advisory body. There must be a coherent narrative, be they 10 or 4 elements, and that is what is lacking, I believe. So, like our Lebanese colleague said, it is also an issue of the credibility of this committee to address these things as they are and not as perhaps we would have wished them to be. So I would think that a referral for this nomination would be wise, and it would allow for it to come back next year with a much more coherent set out. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Ambassador. Now I give the floor to the representative of the Republic of Korea.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Frank Lloyd Wright is renowned for his monumental architectural work of the 20th century, and we cannot deny that there are known influences of his work even in the East Asia. After listening to the statements by all the previous speakers this morning, I'm of the view that every delegation in this House can agree on the fact that these works of Frank Lloyd Wright have outstanding universal value, and therefore they deserve recognition of the World Heritage List. Only difference here in this House is that whether we need to wait more years to develop the 10 sites or more to be nominated as a whole, or we can inscribe 4 exceptional ones first and give them the proper merit they deserve. Korea would like to see the best 4 of his outstanding masterpiece of human creativity inscribed first, if it is technically appropriate, even though there are some reservations raised by some delegations. Korea would like to request the State Party to continue its work to create integrated and coordinated management program and to implement the recommendation to expand these outstanding masterworks by Frank Lloyd Wright. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Representative of Poland, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. At first, I would like to express, on behalf of our delegation, our solidarity with democratic institutions of Turkey and democratically elected government. Concerning the point, Frank Lloyd Wright is one of the most important persons of modern architecture of 20th century, which was underlined many times here. But his work can't be omitted on the World Heritage List. This gap should be eliminated as soon as possible. That's why Poland proposed to concentrate the inscription on selected examples positively assessed by advisory body, and I think about these 4 examples listed by many previous speakers and by state party. In the future, the state party possibly can extend this inscription, adding the rest of the Wright's masterpieces. But now I would like to say once again that these 4 exemplary works, they are enough evaluated and assessed that they should be inscripted as exemplary work of Frank Lloyd Wright. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Now I give the floor to the representative of Indonesia. You have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. First of all, Indonesia would like to convey our sympathy and our condolence for the loss of lives during the recent development. Indonesia would like to commend the State Party for its effort on the conservation of the key works of Frank Lloyd Wright. We acknowledge Frank Lloyd Wright works as a prolific architect with abundance of masterpieces that encompasses residences, place of worship, schools, cultural institutions, and government buildings. We recognize his works that are not only phenomenal within the US, but also in the world. We take note the concern of ICOMOS that the comparative analysis has not yet so far justified consideration of this serial property for the World Heritage List. We also take note the request of ICOMOS to the State Party to reappraise the work of Frank Lloyd Wright. On the other hand, as ICOMOS has mentioned, we believe that some of the scenario building of the individual buildings are considered justified with the criteria of the OUV. After studying carefully these documents, we also recognize that there is a division of opinion between the advisory body and the State Party that need clarification from the State Party, especially on the assessment of the value of each site. Taking into account the good intention of the State Party to protect and conserve this serial property, Indonesia believes that it is appropriate to allow the State Party to provide further explanations on these matters. We therefore would like to request the chair of the committee to give the floor to the State Party to give clarification on this matter. I thank you.
Thank you very much. Representative of Azerbaijan.
Thank you, Madam Chair. First of all, I would like to reiterate our solidarity with the brotherly people of Turkey and express our heartfelt condolences to the family of victims and wish speedy recovery for the injured ones.
Thank you, Madam Chair. We agree that the 4 buildings that have been identified for inscription in the proposed amendment, and they have outstanding universal value. Speaking as an architect, I can testify to the importance and influence of these works by Wright. As students, we were inspired by them. They laid the groundwork for so much of contemporary architecture. That is the true definition of masterwork. Thanks.
Thank you very much, Ambassador. Thank you very much for your words of solidarity and sympathy. Now, I give the floor to the representative of Kuwait.
Thank you, Madam Chair. In order to do justice for Frank Lloyd Wright, we submitted an amendment to the draft decision. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Representative of Angola, you have the floor.
Merci Madame la Présidente. Nous allons être brefs. Donc, considérant le rapport objectif fait par l'ICOMOS et les efforts fournis par l'État partie, l'Angola reconnaît effectivement les valeurs du travail accompli par ces grands architectes, ces valeurs qui vont certainement apporter la diversité sur la liste du patrimoine mondial, en regardant sur les aspects de l'architecture contemporaine. Mais toutefois, nous pensons que l'État partie devrait continuer à travailler sur ces dossiers en apportant des éléments additionnels par rapport aux critères 2, à l'intégrité et également à l'analyse comparative. Donc l'Angola est tout à fait d'accord pour un renvoi. Je vous remercie.
Thank you very much. I see no more requests for the floor from the members. So, representative of Portugal.
Thank you very quickly, Madam President. Perhaps you'll be so kind as, together with a clarification that we will have from the State Party, that also ICOMOS could elaborate further on what has already been said concerning the coherence or lack of the 4 retained sites. I thank you.
Thank you. Representative of Vietnam, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chairman, Madam Chairwoman. First of all, on behalf of the Vietnamese delegation, I would like to express our deep sympathy and solidarity to the people and government of Turkey under these difficult circumstances. Madam Chair, as a number of committee members came back to discuss this nomination, my delegation would like to take the floor again to bring clarification to a number of points. The first point is that some delegate mentioned that we should have more sites in order to have a comprehensive value of the sites. I just want to bring to your attention of the House that the dossier Le Corbusier that we are going to approve in a minute has to come down from the selection in the first nomination of 22 sites to the second nomination of 19 sites and to the last nomination of the 17 sites. So the reduction of the site has happened, and it costs a lot of effort and money. So this is the questions number one. Secondly, there is a discrepancy between some views expressed at the committee and ICOMOS. The ICOMOS believe that you have to trim down in order to single out the most prevailing characteristics of the older sites. And in this nomination, when the state party decided to bring down from 10 to 4, the prevailing message is that organic architecture that links the 4 reduced sites together. So I think that if you ask for more than that, if you try to find additional building of right, of course that can be reflected, but it takes time, and I don't think that is necessary. My third point is that you talk about credibility. Madam Chair, those outstanding architecture are acknowledged by ordinary people, by non-architects like us. So if you don't inscribe them, the credibility is at risk, because even the normal people could acknowledge its outstanding value. My final point, Madam Chair, we talk about the issues of streamlining the process. We have paid very dear for the Le Corbusier nomination, because it takes 7 years for the several countries in order to have finally later a deserved nomination. That should have happened long ago. And finally, USA is not a country that does not have a problem with ICOMOS. They have withdrawn their nomination in the past. They are credible. With all that files, I would like to bring back to the committee discussion. I thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you very much. I now give the floor to the State Party, United States of America. You have the floor.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. The United States appreciates this opportunity to clarify. We want to make it clear that we had a very cordial and enlightening conversation with 2 senior ICOMOS representatives here in Istanbul on Monday. However, they made it clear that they would not change their opinion about the dossier at this point, and we did not intend to imply that they had done so. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you very much. Now I give the floor to the representative of ICOMOS.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just for the avoidance of any doubt, may I say that ICOMOS fully supports the idea of Frank Lloyd Wright being represented on the World Heritage List. Many delegates have spoken on Friday and again today about the enormous influence that Frank Lloyd Wright had around the world. The issue, though, is how, under the World Heritage Convention, places which we inscribe can reflect that influence in a meaningful way. Now, if I may address some of the questions that have been raised. But sorry, before that, may I just also clarify the question of Le Corbusier, which it appeared to be implied that ICOMOS was requesting the state parties to reduce the number of component parts in Le Corbusier's series. The issue was not so much the number, but how each of the components responded to the outstanding universal value of the series as a whole. That was the point of the many meetings we've had, to clarify that fundamental issue of which attributes in which components can contribute to the outstanding universal value of the series as a whole, in line with the requirements of the operational guidelines. Now, in terms of the option that has now been put forward to inscribe 4 components in this series, I would also like to clarify what ICOMOS said in the evaluation. We did not suggest that a series of the 4 buildings, or the 3 perhaps, Roby House, Falling Water and Guggenheim Museum, could make a satisfactory series. What we did say under the justification for criterion 1, that the possibility of Roby House, Falling Water and the Guggenheim Museum justifying criterion 1 individually, not as a series, but if they were put forward as individual sites. Perhaps I could also say that the difficulty we have now is that the series reduced to 4 components cannot be seen to reflect the justification put forward for OUV of the larger series. The OUV of the larger series talks about the way that the buildings respond to more than 50 years of dramatic cultural and technological change with distinctive and highly original modern forms, and how they're designed for a range of urban, suburban and rural environments and for clients from various walks of life. They're also nominated the original series under criterion that would be difficult to justify in the reduced series, criteria 1 and 2. Maybe 1 I think is being proposed, but 2 is all about the influence of Wright's work, which goes beyond the 4 buildings that have been suggested. ICOMOS is not clear how we would be able to take forward such a reduced nomination when the OUV of the series would have been radically changed, as well as the selection of sites. Thank you, Madam Chair.
I thank the representative of ICOMOS. I think it is time to move to the adoption of our decision. May I ask our rapporteur to present the proposed amendments on this draft decision?
Thank you, Madam Chair. If we could switch the screens, please. We have received 2 amendments, 2 of a very conflicting nature. One from Croatia and Vietnam, which proposes to inscribe the site on the World Heritage List. And then we have another amendment from Kuwait proposing to refer the examination of the nomination. Therefore, I would like to ask at your discretion which draft decision we would like to take regarding this particular item. Thank you.
Representative of Lebanon.
Thank you, Mrs. President. We support the Kuwait proposal.
Representative of Peru.
Merci, muchas gracias, señora presidenta. El Perú respalda la propuesta de Croacia y de Vietnam.
Representative of Portugal.
Thank you, Madam. I think that we, before just plunging into this like that, I think we should give due attention to what representative of ICOMOS said. And I think it should make us really reflect on this issue in name of the credibility and the consistency of our decisions. In line with what I previously said, we support the suggestion made by Kuwait. But as I said, more than just saying I'm for A or for B, one really should reflect on what has been said. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Representative of Finland, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Also, Finland would like to thank ICOMOS for the clarification that they made, that in our opinion are very clear and straightforward and tells us what will happen with this nomination depending on what we choose here on the committee. Also, Finland wants to support the amendment from Kuwait. We are in favor of inscribing Frank Lloyd Wright's work, not just single monuments of him. We think that would kind of destroy his life work. So we are very much in favor of the amendment from Kuwait. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Representative of Poland, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Having in mind the possibility, future possibility of the extension of this inscription, I would like to be very much in favor of making this inscription now concerning proposal of Croatia and Vietnam. Thank you.
Representative of Turkey, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. In light of the clarifications made by ICOMOS, we would also like to support the proposal made by Kuwait. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Representative of Burkina Faso.
Merci. Ma délégation souscrit entièrement à la proposition d'inscription de biens dans la mesure où il y a eu un certain nombre d'éclaircissements que l'État partie a eu à apporter, tout comme nous venons également d'entendre ce que l'ICOMOS a eu à dire. Et nous pensons également que nous sommes dans un contexte mondial où, effectivement, en matière d'architecture, on a besoin de repères et par conséquent, je crois que l'œuvre permet justement d'avoir un modèle de référence en la matière. Je vous remercie.
Thank you very much. Representative of Vietnam is asking on point of order.
Thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair. Vietnam proposed a point of order. At the moment, we have two drafts with different directions. I think that according to the rule, I propose that we will discuss on the draft that has the furthest, nature from the original proposal, from the original draft. It means that I propose the committee to discuss on draft jointly proposed by Croatia, Vietnam, and supported by other countries. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Representative of Philippines, you have the floor. Point of order, Lebanon.
Merci, Madame la Présidente. Nous ne sommes pas dans un problème de discussion aujourd'hui, nous sommes simplement dans une adoption d'une résolution. Et donc, il n'y a pas à dire on commence par le premier, on commence par le deuxième. Si vous voulez que nous votons, nous pouvons voter. Mais à ce moment-là, il faut le demander clairement. Sinon, il faut continuer à discuter sur inscribe or refer.
Thank you very much. Representative of Philippines.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. Based on the clarificatory statement of ICOMOS, my delegation would like to support the draft of Kuwait. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Representative of Republic of Korea, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. It's a kind of point of order. So what we are doing now is just taking a decision by voting, or I'm wondering what we are doing now. So I propose that there are slight divided opinions. So how about having some informal consultation on the corridor and just get back to the meeting room? Thank you.
Representative of Angola, you have the floor.
Merci, Madame la Présidente. Je pense que nous l'avons déjà dit, compte tenu des éléments apportés par l'ICOMOS, nous renforçons notre position en appuyant donc l'amendement fait par le Koweït.
Thank you very much. Ladies and gentlemen, dear colleagues, we can see on the screen that there is a slight majority in favor of second option for the referral. If there is no strong objection from the other side, we may go with the second option, but I give the floor to the representative of Cuba.
Gracias, señora presidenta. Antes de llegar a esa decisión que se está proponiendo sobre una clara mayoría, queremos dejar claro que ratificamos nuestra posición de que el sitio sea inscrito en esta sesión. Gracias.
Point of order, Peru.
Muchas gracias, señora presidenta. Varias delegaciones preguntaron en qué situación nos encontrábamos. Porque como hay una división más o menos clara, si vamos a continuar, vamos a arribar a una suerte de votación informal. Yo creo que es mejor que procedamos a la votación formal. Consecuentemente, la delegación del Perú solicita que pasemos a votar y conforme al reglamento se deberá votar primero la moción más alejada del texto, es decir, la proposición de Croacia. Gracias, señora presidenta.
Thank you very much. This proposal should be seconded by another member country. We see no representative of Portugal.
No, Madam President, I'm not going to, I didn't ask for the floor to address that issue. What I'm only saying is that I would wish the country that is presenting this candidature, after all that has been said, which does not affect 1 second, 1 millimeter, the credibility of the work of Frank Lloyd Wright, will they be satisfied with a vote from this committee where, if approved or if rejected, it's the same result? It will be so much on the borderline that it does undermine the credibility of this nomination. I hope that I made myself understood. If you're going to win by, and this is not a contest, that's so totally wrong to look at this as a kind of contest on this issue or in any other issue. So let me just through you put to the United States of America this question. Do they really want a vote which will spell out the division in this committee concerning a very important site, a very important nomination that we all wish to be on the list, but not in this form? And if they're not ready to wait another year, it's only another year, to be able to work it thoroughly and come back with something which is much more consistent and that will merit the consensus and the support of all this committee. And I'll be ready to support it in Krakow. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Ambassador. Representative of Peru, I give the floor.
Muchas gracias, señora presidenta. Yo creo que debemos seguir las reglas Hay una delegación, que es la delegación del Perú, que ha solicitado la votación. Corresponde que sigamos ese curso. Debemos ver si hay una delegación que apoya la solicitud de la votación y proceder a la votación. Si vamos a hacer intervenciones hors de sujet, vamos a gastar el tiempo que es precioso este día. Gracias, señora presidenta.
Thank you very much. Representative of Vietnam, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Madam Chair, I think that in the House of Intellectual Cooperation, Education and Culture, voting on a nomination is not a wise way. We need to discuss in order to be convinced of the direction that we need to go. Simply here the question is, everybody, even the land people, are aware, acknowledge, and appreciate the tremendously outstanding work of Wright. The question here is whether we inscribe the 4 buildings of creative, genuine creativity on this occasion, or we send it back again for next year for consideration and perhaps adoption. I believe that, I agree with what has been said, that we should give the floor to the state party. But if Vietnam were a state party, and I believe other countries will share the same feelings, that we would like to have the immediate inscription, because that is the recognition of not of the committee, but of the whole intellectual circles, especially of the architecture circles, of the outstanding issues of this work. And after that, we do not exclude the possibility of extension. So also on this occasion, I would like to bring to the House another fact. For the Le Corbusier dossier, over 7 years and 2 revisions of the Le Corbusier at considerable expense to all party concerns. The substantive difference in nomination is that now we have somewhat smaller group of buildings. An extraordinary expenditure of time and resources have been made primarily to revise just the justification for OUV. This does not seem to be an effective or desirable process to proceed. The cost would have to be borne by the building owners, and they may not be able to do so in this case. So my delegation is of view that if there is a sense among the committee members that there is OUV in the architecture of Frank Lloyd Wright building, please inscribe it now, although the 4 buildings. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you very much. Representative of Portugal, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam President. Very quickly, I thank my Vietnamese colleague for excluding me of the intellectual community. But are we going to push this through only for financial reasons? Nevertheless, I still retain my suggestion that we give the floor to the state party. I think it is very important to know what is the position of the United States at this stage. Thank you.
Representative of Croatia, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Very shortly also to express on the behalf of Croatian delegation our condolences for the situation and sympathy to the Turkish government and its people. So just after hearing all my colleagues, especially Vietnamese in Poland, we would also second that the state party expresses itself, and we would once again repeat to very briefly that we are for the inscription of those 4 buildings today. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I will give the floor to the representative of Lebanon first, and then I would like to invite the state party to express their views.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just to, sorry. Yeah, just to tell our distinguished delegate of Vietnam, thank you for excluding me from the architectural community. And then I second the proposal by the distinguished delegate of Portugal to ask the state party to take the floor and to say if they accept that Frank Lloyd Wright becomes, like this, a sort of source of division where distinguished experts are saying that they don't want today Frank Lloyd Wright to be reduced to such a situation. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I now give the floor to the representative of State Party, representative of United States of America.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair, for giving the floor to the United States. I would also like to thank the members of the committee for all the support and guidance and good ideas they have shared with us, as well as to ICOMOS and others here present as observers. I'd also like to thank those members of the committee who asked us to take the floor. We would also finally thank those who have made strong arguments in favor of inscribing 4 Frank Lloyd Wright monuments today. The United States understands and appreciates very deeply the concerns of some committee members about the desirability of reaching this by consensus. This is UNESCO, and that is the ideal. However, we also would like to point out that in our view, and I think in the view of many in this broader room, UNESCO has many constituencies, and one of those constituencies is certainly the people of the world. I think our colleague from Vietnam phrased it as eloquently or more eloquently than I could. We need to think, while we think of the importance of Frank Lloyd Wright, while we think of the importance of a strong dossier in favor of Frank Lloyd Wright, we also need to think that there are hundreds of thousands, I would dare say millions, of people who appreciate and value this architecture, and even though it would be decided by a vote, they would be in favor of seeing these 4 sites inscribed on the World Heritage List. So again, while we value consensus, we also feel we need to answer to those constituencies and show that UNESCO and the World Heritage Committee can decide in favor of inscription of works of architecture, masterworks such as these. So please, we would urge that they be inscribed today. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Representative of Peru.
Muchas gracias, señora presidenta. Yo quisiera solicitar que pasemos a otro punto y abramos un breve periodo de consultas sobre esta inscripción.
I think that will be the good idea to have to give some time for further consultations, because up to now we have adopted all our nominations with consensus. That is the way that we want to continue for this dossier as well. That's why I will give a very short time for consultations while we move to the next item on our agenda. I will invite Croatia, Vietnam, Kuwait, Lebanon to have consultations and conclude them as soon as possible. Thank you very much. Now we will move to our next dossier.
Thank you, Madam Chair. We received a factual error notification concerning this nomination, which is to be found on page 65 of Information 8B4 document and on page 67 of the French version of the same document. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you very much. Representative of ICOMOS, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
The architectural work of Le Corbusier is a transnational serial property of 17 sites chosen to represent an outstanding response to some of the fundamental issues of architecture and society in the 20th century. The sites were implemented over a period of half a century. They lie in 7 countries on 3 continents and are said to attest to, for the first time in the history of architecture, the internationalization of architectural practice across the entire planet. In terms of categories of cultural property, this is a serial nomination of 17 sites. As you have also heard, this is the 3rd nomination to be presented for the work of Le Corbusier. The committee in Seville in 2009 referred the nomination back to the state parties in order to allow them to strengthen the justification of outstanding universal value. A 2nd nomination was deferred in Paris in 2012 to allow the state parties to develop, through a constructive dialogue with the World Heritage Centre and the advisory bodies, a common notion of outstanding universal value. Between 2011 and 2013, ICOMOS undertook several meetings with representatives of all the involved state parties. The preamble in the current nomination sets out clearly how this series differs from its predecessors. Quote, "The task of describing the architectural work of Le Corbusier as an outstanding contribution to the modern movement is not simply one of enumerating descriptions of the elements that go to make up the series. Rather, it involves describing the attributes of value underlining the series and legitimizing the choice of each item," end of quote. The present nomination thus sets out precisely how the attributes of each component site contributes to the proposed outstanding universal value of the series. ICOMOS commends the state parties for the clarity of this approach. The series is proposed as an outstanding contribution to the modern movement, which from the 1910s to the 1960s, in meeting challenges of contemporary society, aimed to instigate a unique forum of ideas at a world level, to invent a new architectural language, to modernize architectural techniques, and to meet the social and human needs of modern man. The series provides outstanding responses to these challenges. Very briefly, as this is a long series, I will show each of the component sites in turn. The Maison La Roche-Générée in France are a pair of semi-detached houses. They show the first use of Corbusier's 5 points of architecture, as well as the inaugural use of fluid spaces and colors. The Petit Villa au bord de la Lac-Léman in Switzerland demonstrates the new architectural expression of a minimum house to meet precisely the needs of its inhabitants in a minimalist way, and is also an example of a standard replicable form. The buildings of Cité Frugier in France, in a garden city, show the idea of minimal housing for a whole population and the relevance of prefabrication and types of standardization through using modules of 5 square meters developed in many different ways. The Maison Guillette in Belgium shows some of the first innovative expressions of a new architectural language of open forms and colors, and was a catalyst for spreading ideas in and around Belgium. While the Maison de la Wessenhof-Siedlung in Germany, part of an estate of working-class housing, shows new spatial possibilities offered by the use of concrete beams, as well as being a model of the transformable house with great flexibility in interior spaces. The Villa Savoie, together with its gardener's house in Poissy, France, demonstrates all of Le Corbusier's 5 points of architecture, as well as being emblematic of radical purism. The Immeuble Clarté in Switzerland shows the idea of applying standardized plans and structures to revolutionize middle-class housing. While the Immeuble Locatif Port-Molitor apartments in France show the application of the 5 principles to an apartment block, as well as the use of glass to merge interior and exterior spaces. The Unité d'Habitation in Marseille was a major prototype of a new housing model based on the balance between the individual and the collective, It was intended for mass production and as well was an outstanding work of brutalism. The manufacture at Saint-Dié in France demonstrates how a factory could meet the social and human needs of modern man, as well as being a green factory where workers could experience harmony. The Maison du Dr. Corbusier in Argentina reinvented the 5 principles of architecture many decades after they were formulated, as well as exerting a fundamental influence on South America in terms of architecture. The chapel at Ronchamp in France developed a new style of sculptural architecture, as well as influencing the design of other churches around the world. The Cabanon at Le Corbusier in France demonstrates an extreme example of the minimum standardized dwelling. The complex of the capital at Chandigarh in India demonstrates a complete contribution to the ideas of the Radiant City and the Athens Charter, which Le Corbusier developed. It had considerable influence across the subcontinent and was also based a modular design based on the proportions of the human form. The convent at Sainte-Marie de la Tourette in France further reinterpreted the 5 points of architecture. The National Museum of Western Art in Tokyo as well demonstrates the 5 points and was one of the realizations of the concept of the Museum of Unlimited Growth, but it also cemented ideas on the modern movement in Japan. The final component, the Centre de Récréation du Corps et de l'Esprit at Firminy-Verte in France, demonstrates further examples of improved urban living. The majority of the components are well conserved and protected, but there are a few vulnerabilities, such as development near the Villa Savoie. And since the second nomination, a large stadium has been constructed right in front of the glass facade of the Immeuble Molitor, effectively blocking views of Paris. At Ronchamp, a new visitor center and monastery, both designed by the architect Renzo Piano, have been built into the western slope of the hill. ICOMOS greatly regrets that these developments have occurred during the evaluation process. Turning to outstanding universal value, as already said, this now has great clarity and ICOMOS fully supports the justification to reflect the history of the modern movement through half a century, to demonstrate a radical break with previous styles, to crystallize some of the major concepts of modern architecture for the first time on a global level, to show how Le Corbusier's works laid the foundation of architectural purism and brutalism, and how it presages the beginning of sculptural architecture, as well as attesting to a strategy of research and experimentation with materials and the standardization of components. It also includes several modules and prototypes designed to be mass-produced. We therefore support criteria 2 and 6 and the improvements made to the management systems. Finally, with recommendation for our recommendation is for inscription of this property on the basis of criteria 2 and 6. And the additional recommendations are set out in your document. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you very much. As I have underlined at the beginning of our session, if there is no objection for the inscription and if we don't receive any amendment, we will just move for the adoption of the decision. I give the floor to the representative of Lebanon, which I know have a proposal for an amendment.
Merci, Madame la Présidente. Tout d'abord, une petite proposition. Puisque nous n'avons pas de temps à perdre, peut-être qu'il faudrait demander aux organes consultatifs de réviser leur présentation de façon à faire une présentation courte. Nous avons tous lu les dossiers, les recommandations et tout ce qu'il faut. Peut-être qu'avec une présentation plus courte, on peut gagner du temps. Ensuite, concernant le dossier de Le Corbusier, nous ne pouvons que nous féliciter de la proposition d'inscrire les œuvres de Le Corbusier, puisque cette inscription viendrait enrichir une catégorie sous-représentée sur la liste, celle du patrimoine moderne. Par contre, nous ne comprenons pas que parmi les critères retenus pour attester de la valeur universelle exceptionnelle du bien, le critère 1 ait été écarté d'emblée. Ce critère avait été proposé par l'État partie lors des candidatures précédentes, mais il semble que ce soit suite aux recommandations des experts de l'ICOMOS qu'il ait été écarté cette fois. Cette situation ne nous semble pas compréhensible. Faut-il rappeler qu'un nombre important de biens inscrits dans la catégorie patrimoine moderne l'ont été sur la base du critère 1, y compris la ville de Brasilia, les œuvres de l'architecte Victor Horta à Bruxelles, la maison Schröder de l'architecte Rietveld aux Pays-Bas, la villa Tugendhat de Mies van der Rohe à Brno, les universités de Mexico et de Caracas, l'opéra de Sydney de l'architecte John Hudson, etc. Et enfin, aujourd'hui, l'ensemble moderne de Pampulha au Brésil, que l'ICOMOS propose d'inscrire sur le critère 1. Faut-il également rappeler la place majeure qu'occupe l'œuvre de Le Corbusier dans l'histoire de l'architecture moderne? Je voudrais citer Oscar Niemeyer, l'architecte de Brasilia et de Pampulha, qui écrit cet hommage. Quote, « Tous ceux de ma génération au Brésil avaient une admiration sans borne pour cet homme venu du vieux continent, chargé de culture et d'idées nouvelles. Chez nous, où nous n'avions pas encore une architecture des tropiques novatrice et non pas imitatrice, nous sentions que Le Corbusier était notre maître. » Et puis John Hudson, l'architecte de l'Opéra de Sydney, dans un courrier adressé à Le Corbusier en 1962, « I feel a personal connection with you, as you could say, an architectural son. » Madame la Présidente, comment comprendre que le comité juge que l'œuvre des élèves et des disciples soit digne d'être considérée comme un chef-d'œuvre du génie humain et que cette qualité soit déniée à l'œuvre du maître? Nous demandons donc que le critère 1 soit inclus dans les critères d'inscription de l'œuvre de Le Corbusier. Nous avons une autre modification concernant l'intégrité et l'authenticité. Nous en parlerons quand nous viendrons à la recommandation. Merci.
Thank you very much. May I invite our rapporteur, Mrs. Joe, to present the amendment? Sorry, representative of Portugal first.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I had 2 pages of lovely things to say in support of this candidature and how happy we are to see it. But as for the sake of time, I won't read them out, but just say how happy we are that Le Corbusier finally, and after very serious work, will be in our list. And I fully support what was said by our Lebanese colleague concerning criteria 1, and I'll be supporting it in due course. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Mrs. Joe, you have the floor.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. As indicated by the interventions, we have an amendment from Lebanon, and they would like to include criterion 1 into the justification of OUV. And I would also like to point out that, if we could scroll down a little bit, please, that they have included in the statement of outstanding universal value the criterion 1 part, and as I understand it from the stance of ICOMOS, they would like to review this text, and if they could actually just take note of the provisional SOUV as we have done for those before, where we didn't actually have these texts originally included in the original draft decision. And I would also like to point out that in the amendment presented by Lebanon, we have several changes in the following paragraphs. We have a change in the wordings of criterion 6. The architectural work of Le Corbusier is an outstanding reflection of the attempts of the modern movement to invent a new architectural language, and also in the next sentence to strike out to these major challenges. We also have revisions in the statement of integrity. The ones highlighted in yellow was actually implemented by the Secretariat after receiving factual errors. But we also have amendments that strikes out the sentence and has led to a serious loss of integrity. And also the last sentence of integrity, this enormous structure immediately opposite the site blocks views of the Bois de Boulogne, Paris, through the innovative glass facades and leads to a serious loss of integrity. This part has been stricken out. In the statement of authenticity, again, we have deletions of a paragraph referring to the new developments at Ronchamp. And if we go down to paragraph 4, moving out of the SOUV, Lebanon would like to delete the first recommendation of subparagraph A, but leave the rest all intact from the original draft decision. So I would just like to ask you, Madam Chair, if ICOMOS would be on board to take note of the provisional statement of OUV and then address the amendments that has been included in the SOUV separately. And then we would have to ask the committee if they would be happy with the recommendations with one deletion of the recommendation. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Representative of Lebanon, you have the floor.
Merci Madame la Présidente. Je voudrais juste expliquer notre position concernant l'authenticité et l'intégrité. Il y a eu de longs débats entre les experts un peu partout dans le monde autour des nouvelles constructions à Ronchamp et sur la porte Molitor et leur influence ou pas sur la valeur des œuvres de Le Corbusier. Bon. Que les experts qui ont écrit ce rapport, les experts d'ICOMOS, prennent parti dans ce débat autour des nouvelles constructions à Ronchamp et sur la porte Molitor, c'est leur droit le plus strict. Par contre, je pense que le fait qu'ils embarquent le comité du patrimoine mondial de l'UNESCO dans une position en flèche qui va jusqu'à demander à l'État partie d'envisager la destruction de ces constructions qu'ils jugent sacrilèges, ce n'est pas envisageable. Le comité ne peut pas rentrer dans des discussions et des débats autour de ce point. Donc, c'est pour ça que nous proposons de supprimer carrément toute référence à ce débat sur Ronchamp et la porte Molitor. Bon, nous avons un avis, moi j'ai un avis différent de celui d'ICOMOS, les différents experts ont des avis différents, ne rentrons pas dans ce débat. Point. Merci.
Thank you very much. Now I will move to the adoption of this draft decision as amended. I see no objection from the member countries. So, we don't have time. Very short. Representative of ICOMOS.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just want, the Honourable Delegate of Lebanon was asking about Criterion 1 and why ICOMOS had excluded this. I just wanted to point out that during the consultations with the state parties over a 2-year period in the development of this nomination, the use of, or the possible use of Criterion 1 was discussed in great detail and whether it was applicable or not. The reason why it was not in the end included was because it wasn't seen as applicable to the whole series in terms of how each of the component parts could contribute to Criterion 1. So it was not, if I may say so, ICOMOS's decision, but this collaborative process that led to the removal of Criterion 1, just for clarification. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, ICOMOS. Now we can move to the adoption of the decision. I see no objection. I now declare decision 40-8B31 adopted as amended. May I congratulate Argentina, Belgium, France, Germany, India, Japan, and Switzerland on behalf of the entire committee for the inscription of this transnational property. Now I would like to give the floor to the representative of the 7 states parties for a brief 2-minute statements. Thank you. Representative of France, you have the floor.
J'attends, Madame la Présidente, que les manifestations d'enthousiasme cessent.
Merci de votre soutien.
May I ask the representatives of those states to continue their celebrations outside the room so we can listen to the representative of 7 countries, Ambassador of France.
Merci, Madame la Présidente. Puisque c'est la première fois que la France s'exprime aujourd'hui, elle souhaiterait rappeler qu'elle condamne de la manière la plus ferme la tentative de coup de force qui a eu lieu ces derniers jours. Et comme l'a rappelé M. Hérault, ministre des Affaires étrangères, à M. Cavusoglu, ministre des Affaires étrangères turc hier, la population turque a montré sa grande maturité et son courage en s'engageant pour le respect de ses institutions. Au nom des pays qui ont porté la candidature de l'œuvre architecturale de Le Corbusier depuis tant d'années et qui sont réunis autour de moi, Allemagne, Argentine, Belgique, France, Inde, Japon et Suisse, je voudrais sincèrement remercier les membres du comité de cette décision, sans oublier la contribution du Centre du patrimoine mondial, merci Madame Rössler, et de l'ICOMOS à ce succès. Je vais laisser la parole à la Fondation Le Corbusier et à son président, qui est le meilleur porte-parole. Mais je voulais néanmoins dire avant que, convaincus qu'en affirmant la dimension internationale inédite de ce projet, ils élargissent les limites mêmes du patrimoine mondial. C'est vrai pour l'œuvre de Le Corbusier, répandue de par le monde et dont elle a changé le visage. Au fond, chaque nouvelle inscription est un peu comme une nouvelle conquête de l'esprit humain sur la barbarie terroriste et violente qui nous frappe tous et qui a en particulier frappé la France à Nice une nouvelle fois récemment. Je donne la parole à la Fondation Le Corbusier.
Merci. La Fondation Le Corbusier se réjouit de la décision du Comité du patrimoine mondial d'inscrire l'œuvre de Le Corbusier sur la liste du patrimoine de l'humanité, même si c'est un moment difficile. Nous le réalisons bien pour des pays comme la Turquie ou la France. Proposée par 7 États, cette candidature véritablement transcontinentale a bénéficié de très nombreux soutiens. La Fondation remercie tous ceux qui ont permis son succès, outre les États partenaires, Allemagne, Argentine, Belgique, Inde, Japon, Suisse et France. Elle a été portée également par les collectivités territoriales, hôtes des bâtiments figurant dans la série, par les propriétaires, les habitants, les usagers, ainsi que tous les experts associés au projet. En plus des aspects qui ont joué un rôle déterminant dans le succès de cette candidature et qui ont été rappelés pour certains d'entre eux aujourd'hui, je voudrais retenir pour terminer 2 dimensions de l'œuvre de Le Corbusier qui expliquent le rayonnement dont elle jouit encore aujourd'hui. Le premier, c'est le souci constamment réaffirmé par l'architecte de traiter chaque être humain, quel que soit son rang et sa position sociale, avec dignité. Chacun a droit à de l'architecture de qualité. Cette préoccupation n'a jamais cessé de hanter l'architecte depuis ses premiers projets de villas jusqu'aux unités d'habitation d'après-guerre. Le second aspect, c'est l'optimisme. L'œuvre de Le Corbusier témoigne d'une foi dans l'homme et dans la possibilité qui lui est offerte de choisir son avenir. Nous avons plus que jamais besoin de cet optimisme aujourd'hui. Merci encore à tous pour cette belle réussite.
Thank you very much. Congratulations. May I invite the delegates to take their seats, please?
Très, très heureux. On est content, hein? Ah bah oui, putain, très, très heureux. Ça va toi? Enfin, ouais.
Merci, monsieur l'ambassadeur.
Travail bien fait.
Super.
Ladies and gentlemen, may I invite you to take your floors, to take your seats, please? Representative of Portugal, you have the floor. No?
Thank you, Madam. Very kind. I didn't ask for the floor, but as you gave me the floor, I'll just say that I think that we should move to conclude the point on the Frank Lloyd Wright inscription or non-inscription, as I think there is not a consensus. So we would proceed to a vote, and I suggest that it would be a secret ballot. Thank you.
May I ask the members of the committee if the proposal of Portugal for a secret vote is seconded by any other member country? Representative of Philippines.
Madam Chair, my delegation seconds the motion. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So we go for a secret vote. Ladies and gentlemen, unfortunately, there is no consensus on this. Ladies and gentlemen, as we do not have any consensus on this dossier, as asked by the representative of Portugal and seconded by the representative of Philippines, we will go for a secret voting on this nomination. So I would like to give the floor to the legal advisor of UNESCO.
Merci Madame la Présidente. Nous nous trouvons face donc à une conduite de vote au scrutin secret. Je voudrais à ce sujet vous rappeler les dispositions pertinentes du règlement intérieur du comité. C'est l'article 42 du comité. Avant l'ouverture du scrutin, Madame la Présidente, vous devez désigner 2 scrutateurs qui seront désignés parmi les délégations des membres du comité qui seront chargés de dépouiller les bulletins de vote. Les bulletins de vote sont affichés à l'écran derrière moi. Par la suite, bien évidemment, chacun des États membres du comité sera appelé à voter. Ça, c'est les dispositions de l'article 42, paragraphe 1 du règlement intérieur. Ensuite, lorsque le décompte sera achevé et que les scrutateurs auront rendu compte au président, ce sera vous, Madame la Présidente, qui proclameront les résultats de ce scrutin en veillant à ce que soient dûment inscrits comme suit les résultats du scrutin. D'une part, du nombre des membres du comité sont déduits le nombre des membres du comité absents si il y en aurait. Ensuite, le nombre de bulletins blancs, s'il y en a également. Et enfin, le nombre de bulletins nuls, s'il y en a. Bien évidemment, le chiffre restant constituera le nombre de suffrages exprimés. Voilà les dispositions du règlement intérieur pertinentes aux conduites des votes au scrutin secret, Madame la Présidente. Merci.
No. ¿Cuándo pidió Portugal el voto? Cuando ustedes estaban hablando. ¿Tomó la palabra? Ah, ya.
May I remind the members of the committee that we have already started the procedure for voting. That's why we cannot interrupt the voting. Representative of Portugal, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I don't think we have yet started the voting, but could I have some clarification of the legal advisor concerning, is an abstention not possible in this situation? Because I think there should be the possibility of having an abstention. Thank you.
You have the floor, our legal advisor.
Merci Madame la Présidente. Il me semble que lors des précédents votes à scrutin secret qui ont eu lieu lors des précédentes sessions, l'abstention a été assimilée à un bulletin blanc. Il me semble que ça avait été comme ça lors des dernières sessions où avait eu lieu un vote ou un bulletin secret. Merci Madame la Présidente.
Representative of Peru, you have the floor.
Muchas gracias, señora Presidenta. Solo para expresar el pleno acuerdo de la delegación del Perú con lo señalado por la asesoría jurídica. Ese es el procedimiento, esa es la lectura del reglamento. Gracias.
Thank you. Representative of Portugal, you have the floor.
Merci pour la clarification du service juridique. Oui, mais alors il faudrait quand même les dire clairement que l'abstention est possible. Donc les États membres ont la possibilité de voter oui, non, blanc ou s'abstenir. Merci.
Representative of Vietnam.
Very practical request, Madam Chair. Would it be possible for the committee members and all the conference have the view of the 4 sites on the screen, please? the 4 buildings that we are going to vote on the screen, please. Thank you.
I would like to give the floor to the representative of Peru. You are asking for the... No more. Representative of Lebanon.
Oui, Madame la Présidente, excusez-moi, mais on n'a pas le temps maintenant d'aller chercher dans les documents les photos des sites. Tout le monde les a vus, tout le monde a lu les dossiers de candidature, tout le monde connaît ça. Ceux qui ne l'ont pas fait, ben tant pis pour eux. Normalement, on a vu ces dossiers, on a lu les dossiers, on a vu les photos. Ce n'est pas la peine maintenant de perdre son temps à aller chercher des photos pour les mettre. Je suis désolé, mais l'aimable, le respecté délégué du Vietnam demande des choses qui ne font que retarder le travail. Merci.
Thank you very much. We will start the voting procedures. Representative of Peru, you have the floor.
Muchas gracias, Presidenta. La solicitud de la delegación de Vietnam creo que no es antirreglamentaria. Si no es antirreglamentaria y está cubierta por el reglamento, pues hay que acceder a ella.
Representative of Portugal, Ambassador, you have the floor.
Well, Madam President, I would have supposed, as my Lebanese colleague, that everyone is thoroughly instructed on the details of the dossier. But my point is slightly of detail. Where would they be put, the photographs? Because we must have the text of the projects, the resolutions, in French and in English, and I don't see much space to put any photographs. So could we proceed with the vote, please?
Yes, that's what we will do. We will start the voting process. And I will give the floor to Madame Rösler.
I will read out the name of the country, and please come forward with, to the voting box, which you see in front of you with the 2 tellers. Angola. To advance, maybe for the sake of time, the other countries could maybe already line up so we can speed up procedures. Thank you very much. Angola has voted. Yes, please. Yes. Azerbaijan has voted. Burkina Faso has voted. Croatia has voted. Cuba has voted. Finland has voted. Indonesia has voted. Jamaica. If Kazakhstan could already come forward. Then. Jamaica has voted. Kazakhstan, please. Has voted. Kuwait. Kuwait has voted. Lebanon. Has voted. Peru. Peru has voted. Philippines, please. You can wave at them. Philippines has voted. Poland. has voted. Portugal has voted. Republic of Korea has voted. Tunisia has voted. Turkey has voted. United Republic of Tanzania, to be followed then by Vietnam. If you are ready, getting ready, please. Tanzania has voted. Vietnam has voted. And Zimbabwe, please. Zimbabwe has voted. Madam Chair, this concludes the voting procedure, and it will be now, the box will be now opened. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Ladies and gentlemen, dear delegates, I have just received the result of the secret ballot. May I read it? 21 voted, 3 blank ballots, abstention, 18 valid votes. Majority required is 12, 2/3 majority. Votes in favor of amendment is 8. Votes against amendment is 10. Therefore, the amendment is rejected. Now, may I ask the distinguished members of the committee to go on with the second amendment, which is referral, and to accept this second amendment, referral, with consensus. That's my request to the members of the committee. I see no objection, so representative of Peru, you have the floor.
Muchas gracias, señora presidenta, para respaldar su propuesta de aprobar el texto por consenso. Gracias.
Thank you very much. I think we can go now with the second amendment. Can we see the amendment again? Would you like to read the second amendment again, please?
Thank you,
Mrs.
Madam
Cho.
Chair. The second amendment is to refer the examination of the nomination, and we have a few recommendations that have been amended. So if we could go on to the sub-paras of paragraph 2, I would like to read out the current text. To redefine the rationale for a series of sites, not necessarily the one currently nominated, that might have the potential to justify OUV through conveying the way one or more exceptional facets of its oeuvre influence the architecture of the 20th century. B, define more structured management for individual components coordinated by the Frank Lloyd Wright World Heritage Council. And C, examine and pursue opportunities to revise property boundaries, expand buffer zones, and enhance protection in and beyond the buffer zones for component sites in relation to the attributes of potential OUV. Paragraph 3, we will now strike out the version from, yes, thank you. Paragraph 3 from Kuwait is to encourages the state party to consider inviting ICOMOS to offer advice on the above recommendations in the framework of the upstream process. And that is all. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We can move to the adoption of the draft decision as amended. I see no objection. I declare draft decision 40Com 8B 30 adopted as amended. Thank you. We can now move to our next nomination. I would like to invite ICOMOS to present the nomination of the Antigua Naval Dockyards and related archaeological sites, Antigua and Barbuda. ICOMOS, may I request you to have a very brief presentation? Thank you very much.
Thank you, Madam Chair. The property is comprised of an ensemble of 18th, 19th century port facilities and buildings laid down on a series of deep, narrow bays forming the known English Harbour and related fortification on the surrounding hills for protection of the harbour itself. It was built at a time when European nations were battling to achieve supremacy of seas in the Caribbean and to obtain control over the lucrative sugar production of these islands. The natural setting of this side of the island of Antigua offered ideal conditions as hurricane shelters. and the strategic value of the harbor was exploited since the 17th century, initially by the merchants based in Antigua and then by the British Navy. The construction of such a large dockyard and facilities was supported at the time by planters based in the region, but could not have been possible without the labor of generations of enslaved Africans, on which the British Empire, as well as other colonial powers, was heavily dependent on. Archaeological remains attest to the relaxation of the segregation rules at the dockyard during its operation. The property is among the few dockyards throughout the world that clearly demonstrate the transition from using British prototype to developing colonial building morphologies. The property was nominated by the state party under criterion 4, and the comparative analysis fully justifies this criterion. The dockyard and related facilities demonstrate the process of colonization and spreading of building forms, technologies by a naval power. Although not originally proposed by the state party, the ICOMOS panel found that the property has also the potential to meet criterion 2 on the ground of the information contained in the dossier. Following dialogue with the state party, a justification for criterion 2 was proposed. The property exemplifying the contribution and specific knowledge of enslaved African workers in building and operating the dockyard. ICOMOS fully concurs with the state party with the proposed justification, but also considered that the Antigua Naval Dockyard shows how British military building prototypes were adapted to cope with extreme climate, and the lessons learned in the Caribbean were successfully applied elsewhere. Clarence House, for example, demonstrates how Georgian architecture illustrates the emergence of a distinctly colonial architecture. Major and continuing efforts have been made by the state party to ensure the protection and conservation of the nominated property since the 1950s, and this was strengthened by the establishment of the national park in 1984. However, gaining control over the ongoing deterioration processes of main structure is a complex challenge that requires strategy with clear objectives and adequate human and financial resources. The property is under considerable development pressure due to its high tourist potential, and these pressures need to be carefully controlled and limited. In summary, the property integrity has been demonstrated, the criterion have been demonstrated, and the comparative analysis justified. The authenticity, although there is a tendency for over-restoration that requires experience guidance, and the state party has already upon on this side. The legal protection could be considered satisfactory, and a heritage insensitive planning needs to be secured through the approval of revised land use plan. The current management plan needs to be strengthened in relation to conservation and maintenance of the property, and the state party has begun to address these aspects. ICOMOS therefore recommends the Antigua Naval Dockyard and related archaeological sites be inscribed on the World Heritage List on the basis of criteria 2 and 4 with a set of recommendations that could be found at page 36 of working document 40.8b of the English version and page 38 of French version. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you very much, ICOMOS. I have been informed that our rapporteur did not receive any amendment for this decision. I give the floor to the representative of Jamaica.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. Very mindful of the time constraints and respectful of the decision that we had made earlier, if you would allow me to make a brief statement. I am certain you can appreciate that even as we say congratulations, the entire Caribbean is celebrating the submission of the Antigua Naval Dockyard and related archaeological sites under criterion 2 and 4. The site pictures as an architectural wonder and is testament to the phenomenal labor and skills of enslaved Africans whose contributions were crucial for the establishment of the facility and more widely for the development of the British Empire trade and industrialization. Madam Chair, the Antiguan submission makes a significant statement about the emerging presence of small island developing states in global heritage, especially bearing in mind that only a day ago we witnessed another inscription from Pacific SIDS in Micronesia. Jamaica lauds the exemplary nomination of Antigua and Barbuda and wholeheartedly supports its inscription to the World Heritage List. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So we can move to the adoption of this decision. I see no objection. I now declare decision 40-8B32 adopted. May I congratulate Antigua and Barbuda on behalf of the entire committee for their first inscription on the World Heritage List. May I give the floor now to the representative of Antigua and Barbuda? You have the floor. You have the floor for a brief statement.
Thank you, Madam Chair. On behalf of the people and government of Antigua and Barbuda, I thank the World Heritage Center, ICOMOS, the World Heritage Committee, and all who made this and assisted us in guiding us through this process. In particular, I thank the Japanese government, its JFIT program, that funded much of the capacity building programs in the Caribbean, without which we would not be here today. This is our first inscription. It's a great morale boost for our small island developing state. We are committed to the continued and sustainable use and management of the site and to the full implementation of the ICOMOS recommendations, some of which have already been completed. Again, we thank all who assisted, particularly our Caribbean colleagues and fellow small island developing states. And above all, we thank the people and government of Turkey for their warm welcome and generous hospitality. I thank you all.
Thank you very much. I now invite ICOMOS to present the next nomination, Pampulha Modern Ensemble, Brazil. ICOMOS, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Designed in 1940 around an artificial lake, the Pampulha Architectural Ensemble was part of a center for leisure and culture within a garden city neighborhood of Belo Horizonte, the new capital of Minas Gerais state. Within landscape grounds, the main buildings were the casino, the ballroom, the yacht golf club, and the church, all designed by architect Oscar Niemeyer, working in collaboration with landscape designer Roberta Bell Marx and artists. Within the ensemble, a new architectural language emerged that exploited the plastic potential of concrete, engaged buildings with their landscape context, and integrated the plastic arts. In terms of categories, this is a site. It is also put forward as a cultural landscape. The Pampulha Ensemble was developed around a large, sinuous, man-made lake, part of which is included in the nomination. The casino was the first to be built on a small peninsula. Next slide, please. And such buildings were a powerful attraction at the time, and its landscape gardens have been fully restored, and the spaces within were linked by ramps and elliptical corridors to create a promenade building. Can you go faster with the slides? The ballroom for social interaction was created on a small island linked with the bridge. Although the original Bell Marx plans are missing, they have been restored on the basis of surviving images, and the interiors also. The church, the spiritual heart of the ensemble, is constructed of 5 adjoining ellipsoid concrete shells. Although shells like this had been used for industrial buildings, their use here marks their first religious use. And parts of the outer surfaces are decorated with tiles by Paulo Werneck, and blue and white murals by Candido Portinari cover the facades facing the street. The gardens, designed by Pearl Marx, were in 2 parts, and those immediately around the church have already been restored. The Yacht Golf Club was designed to look like a ship or a boat moored on the water's edge. It's the only building that's not been restored. And in addition, new buildings have modified its original relationship with the landscape, and its interior has also been altered. Nothing remains of its original landscaping scheme. Around the edge of the property, there are some threats, as the large suburban houses of the surrounding neighborhood never really attracted the wealthy owners as was expected, and many have declined over the years. There are plans to use the restoration of the Ensemble as part of plans to revitalize and enhance the wider urban neighborhood. In terms of outstanding universal value, ICOMOS considers that the Pampulha Ensemble justifies outstanding universal for the way it developed a new architectural language based on modern precepts, but tempered to provide a more contextual approach that proved highly influential in responding to emerging national identities in South America. We consider that the ensemble satisfies criteria 1, 2, and 4. Integrity and authenticity need to be strengthening through the restoration of some of the parts, but there's a strong commitment to this work. Management also needs strengthening, particularly for the buffer zone. ICOMOS considers that the clarity of the new architectural vocabulary of the ensemble must be totally evident, including the artistic and landscape elements, which are key features of the concept. There is a need to restore parts of the components and to reinstate the clear mirror of the lake at their center. During the evaluation process, a clear commitment was made by the state party to undertake this work, supported by federal, state, and municipal governments. Further, an implementation plan has been drawn up and with an agreed budget and timetable. This plan will restore the yacht club building, including its interior decoration and its landscape. It will restore part of the Bellmarks landscape near the church. It will restore the original entrance to the ballroom, and it will improve the water quality of the lake to recreational standards. So finally, with regard to inscription, ICOMOS recommends that the Pampulha Modern Ensemble be inscribed as a cultural landscape on the list on the basis of criteria 1, 2, and 4. We have additional recommendations. These are set out in your documents. I won't read them. But we'd just like to add that ICOMOS is ready and willing to offer any further advice to the State Party on the above conservation and management processes if requested. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you very much. I have been informed by our rapporteur that we didn't receive any amendment on this draft decision. So we can, I see no request. Representative of Portugal.
Thank you, Madam President. I'll be very brief. Allow me only to congratulate Brazil on this nomination, and we thank Brazil for bringing it before this committee. This impressive and influential piece of urban planning set around a man-made lake. While encouraging the state party to pursue its efforts of restoration of the main building and designated landscape, Portugal hardly supports the inscription of Pampulha Modern Ensemble in the World Heritage. Despite being built for a time that soon no longer existed, its unified concept as a single design entity made possible a reconversion of the building from the initially planned purpose into new functions. It managed to keep the entire contemporaneity of the initial project and still echoes the socio-economic changes that have occurred over the years. So let me again congratulate Brazil for bringing this up to the attention of the committee, and I thank you.
Thank you very much. So we can move to the adoption of the draft decision. I see no objection. I now declare decision 40-com 8B 33 adopted. Let me congratulate Brazil on behalf of the entire committee for the inscription of this property. Brazil. Representative of Brazil, you have the floor for a 2-minute brief statement.
Thank you, Madam Chairperson. Ladies and gentlemen, firstly, I would like to express our solidarity with the people and the government of Turkey. In 1940, Juscelino Kubitschek, the mayor of Belo Horizonte, invited the young architect Oscar Niemeyer to design a new spot for leisure and culture. Pampulha was born from a synthesis of new ideas, forms, and techniques in an experiment that successfully join together architecture, landscaping, painting, sculpture, and ceramics. It inaugurated a new modern language fused with art so gentle and yet so powerful that it asserted a renewed sense of national identity and civic pride. Madam Chairperson, it is a great pleasure for me as Brazil's Minister of Culture to be in Istanbul to witness the inscription of this outstanding property on the World Heritage List. I want to express our deep gratitude to the committee members, to the advisory bodies, and to the World Heritage Center for this accomplishment. I would like to commend the dedicated work of the civil servants from Belo Horizonte Municipality, the Government of Minas, the Foreign Ministry, and the Ministry of Culture through IFAM. Lastly, I want to thank the enthusiastic support of the civil society who bring life to this property. To conclude, Madam Chairperson, with your permission, I should like to give my remaining time to the property manager, who will speak on behalf of the Mayor of Belo Horizonte. Thank you very much. Obrigado.
Dear Madam Chair, dear members of the World Heritage Committee, to arrive to this historical day, it has been a long journey. This achievement was only possible because of intensive multi-actor and multi-level engagement and collaboration of several partners. This is a very important recognition that fills us with pride and certainty that it represents a milestone to our cultural heritage and for modern architecture, history, and citizens. We embrace the huge responsibility of preservation of Pampulha Modern Ensemble in the city of Belo Horizonte, in the state of Minas Gerais, Brazil, and more than ever for the world. In the name of Belo Horizonte citizens, I would like to thank this committee, ICOMOS, UNESCO, and all our partners for the inscription in the World Heritage List. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. We can now move to the next item. I now invite ICOMOS to present the significant boundary modification of the archaeological site of Panama Viejo and historic district of Panama, Panama. ICOMOS, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chairperson. I'm presenting the ICOMOS evaluation for the request of boundary modification submitted for the World Heritage Property archaeological site of Panama Viejo and Historic District of Panama, which includes a request for name change. The property consists of a serial site with two components. The boundary modification was requested by the World Heritage
Excuse me,
Committee.
may I ask the representative of Brazil to switch off their microphone? Brazil, could you please kindly switch off your microphone? Thank you very much.
Thank you, Madam Chair. The property consists of a serial site with two components. The boundary modification was requested by the World Heritage Committee in response to the development project Cinta Costeira 3 Expressway. At its 34th session, the World Heritage Committee requested the state party to halt this project and to conduct a necessary impact assessment. At its 37th session, the committee regretted the decision to launch the Cinta Costeira 3 Expressway, which modified irreversibly the attributes of outstanding universal value. The committee requested the state party to submit a significant boundary modification to allow it to justify a revision of the outstanding universal value of the property and to invite the World Heritage Center ICOMOS joint reactive monitoring mission. The committee concluded that in the absence of efficient and adequate implementation of this committee request, the property would be considered for being deleted from the World Heritage List. In 2013, the World Heritage Center and ICOMOS undertook a joint high-level mission which recommended three possible options for the boundary change. The inscribed property is composed of two serial sites located at a distance of 8 kilometers from each other. The archaeological site of Panama Viejo covers an area of 28 hectares and includes the early Spanish settlement and ruins of the 1670s city destroyed during a pirate attack. The historic center of Panama City includes the walled city of Panama, rebuilt after this pirate attack. The current request for boundary modification proposes a reduction of this property component from 29 to 22 hectares, excluding 7 plots, which you see highlighted here, as well as adding a buffer zone. Excluded are shoreline plots said to have been affected by the Scinta Costera, as well as a larger area to the west, which has no obvious coastal connection. Removed were, among other parts, the beach, a seawall, and garden seen here. However, this photo also shows the visual impact by a variety of other developments in the proximity of the site. And the Chiriki Point at the furthest extension of the city peninsula, which has also been removed. ICOMOS considers that the qualifying conditions of integrity and authenticity are no longer met for all attributes contained in the revised boundaries proposed. Moreover, ICOMOS considers that the urban and infrastructure developments have reduced the capacity of the attributes to reflect criterion 6. While the state of conservation of Panama Viejo is overall good, the architectural fabric in the historic center of Panama City is in very different conditions, but has overall improved in recent years. And ICOMOS acknowledges the state party's efforts to improve the urban infrastructure in relation to electricity, pavements, sewage, and water supply. ICOMOS welcomes the efforts of the state party aimed at adaptive reuse of the historic buildings, but underlines the need for minimum necessary modification. ICOMOS considers that the buffer zone provided on land is adequate, but that that the buffer zone provided in the sea is adequate, but that further protection on land is needed to control the visual impact of high-rise developments. ICOMOS therefore considers that the proposed boundaries and the protective measures in place are not adequate. At this stage, management effectiveness has not been demonstrated, and conservation measures, even though adequate, can still be strengthened. ICOMOS recommends that the significant boundary modification for the archaeological site and historic center of Panama City, Republic of Panama, should not be approved. ICOMOS recommends to review all 3 options proposed by the 2013 high-level joint mission and to revise the proposed boundary modification on the basis of a substantial revision to the OUV. There are some additional recommendations related to HIAs and the identification and prevention of further visual impacts, as well as a request for provision of adequate funding. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you very much. I have been informed that there is an amendment on this draft decision. May I ask Mrs. Joe to present this draft amendment?
Thank you, Madam Chair. We've received an amendment from the delegation of Poland, and this is to amend paragraph 3 to cut short the existing paragraph. So, recalling decision 37-7B-100, adopted at its 37th session, requests the state party, with the support of ICOMOS if requested, to submit a significant boundary modification. The second amendment takes place in paragraph 4, encourages the state party to consider inviting ICOMOS to offer advice, and deleting out the upstream process because this, and then after the original draft, there is an insertion of 2 extra paragraphs. Paragraph 6 requests the state party to submit to the World Heritage Center by 1st February 2017 an updated report on the state of conservation of the property for examination by the World Heritage Committee at its 41st session in 2017. Paragraph 7 also reminds the state party to submit a significant boundary modification by 1st February 2018 with the reservation that in the In the absence of the implementation of the request made in this decision, the property would be deleted from the World Heritage List at its 43rd session in 2019. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Is there any objection for the proposed amendments? I see none. So I declare decision 40Com 8B 34 adopted as amended. We have already concluded all the nominations on cultural science. May I congratulate again those countries whose nominations are approved and their sites are inscribed on the World Heritage List. We will now move, of course, to mixed size and natural size, but we will have a slight change on the order of the nominations. I would like to give the floor to the Secretariat to announce those slight changes on the order of the nominations.
Thank you, Madam Chair. We are going to proceed a bit differently from what originally foreseen in terms of the order of nomination, in order to try and have the easiest one coming before. So it means that those nominations that are recommended for inscription will be discussed before, and the new order is starting from the next discussion: India, Khangchendzonga National Park, then Canada, Pimachiowin Aki, and then China, Hubei Shenongjia, then Canada, Mistaken Point, then Mexico, Archipelago of Revillagigedo, and then we will proceed with the nominations that are proposed for referral. So it will be Sudan, Sanganet Marine National Park and Dungana Bay, Makawar Island Marine National Park. After that, Iran, Lut Desert, and then Thailand, Khangchendzonga Forest Complex. After that, we will proceed with the nomination proposed for deferral in the order, which is Chad, Enedi Massif Natural and Cultural Landscape, Iraq, the Awara of Southern Iraq, Refuge of Biodiversity and Relict Landscape of the Mesopotamian Cities, Kazakhstan, Kyrgyzstan, Uzbekistan, Western Tian Shan, and then we will finish with the two nominations proposed for non-inscription, which is Turkmenistan, Mountain Ecosystem of Koitantag, and France, Tectonovolcanic Ensemble of the Chain de Puy and Le Manifold. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you very much. So we can move to our next nomination. I would like to invite ICOMOS and IUCN to present the mixed nomination of Khangchendzonga National Park, India. But before I give the floor to Mr. Bazamo, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. We received a factual error notification on this nomination, which is to be found, actually two factual errors notification, as is a mixed nomination, on page 57 and 58 of the English document, INF 8B4, and on page 42 and 43 of the French version of the same document. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you very much. Representative of ICOMOS, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Khangchendzonga National Park has been nominated as a mixed property, but from a cultural perspective, it is also a cultural landscape with strong associative values. The Khangchendzonga Massif is a mountainous area including several peaks exceeding 6,000 and 7,000 meters in height. It determines the physiography of Sikkim overall. Mountain Khangchendzonga and many natural features within it, like lakes, water bodies, glaciers, mountain peaks, are endowed with cultural meanings and sacred significance. Khangchendzonga itself means the great snowy repository of 5 treasures. From a cultural perspective, the property has been nominated for it outstandingly expresses the coexistence of multiple layers of sacred meanings, shamanic and Buddhist tradition that form altogether the Sikkimese identity. The core of the cultural significance is conveyed by the Buddhist concept of Bayul, or sacred land, paradise on earth, which finds an equivalent in the Lepcha's Maya Liang concept. Associated rituals have been consolidated into texts as Nai Sol, a prophetical Buddhist source, and Nai Yig, a sort of guide to all sacred sites and treasures of the hidden land of Bayul de Moyong. Other important rituals associated with the property is Panglab Sol. It has been consolidated in the 17th, 18th century and includes an itinerary through the main monasteries and notable natural features mentioned in sacred texts. It's still performed annually. Khangchendzonga, therefore, appears to be the heartland of a culture which has evolved through the contribution of several Sikkimese ethnic groups, with the contribution of Buddhism and different cultural traditions into a syncretistic cosmogony based on traditional knowledge of the environment. The state party nominated the property under Criterion 3, and ICOMOS noted that the codification in written text of beliefs and rituals through the precise description of natural elements to be venerated justifies the application of this criterion. Although not proposed by the state party, ICOMOS panel found also that Criterion 6 was justified, as the beliefs and rituals associated with Khangchendzonga express the profound kinship of the indigenous and Sikkimese populations large with their natural environment, as well as association with the Buddhist religion. Following dialogue with the state party, the perimeter of the buffer zone was slightly modified in order to include features, man-made features that were not included neither in the nominated property or in the buffer zone and are associated to the significance of the property. The property is not threatened by development. On the other hand, considerable pressure exists in town areas of the traditional zones, and the increase of tourism may weaken over time the cultural ties between the population and their living environment, as well as the traditional knowledge. The expanded comparative analysis justify consideration of this property for the World Heritage List, and following the slight modification of the boundaries of the buffer zone, the integrity of the property has been demonstrated, as well as its authenticity, and the criteria, as been said, have been justified. The property protection is adequate, and from the cultural perspective, the significance of the natural feature is also protected under notification of Home Department of the Government of Sikkim, which prohibits conversion of natural sites, defilement of sacred lakes, and climbing of certain peaks for their religious significance and associations. Traditional management practice of monasteries and their lands continues to be performed, although they might need some sustenance and reinforcement. Conservation of the cultural man-made site may benefit from guidelines to orient maintenance and rehabilitation intervention. With regard to management, the state party has demonstrated its full engagement to put in place effective mechanisms to ensure that all the cultural dimensions of the property are properly managed. However, it remains a complex challenge safeguarding and sustaining indigenous knowledge and culture. ICOMOS therefore recommends a property for inscription in the World Heritage List on the ground of Criterion 3 and 6, and also accompany the recommendation with a set of other additional recommendations that can be found at page 16 of the working document 40-8b. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you very much. Representative of IUCN, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and good afternoon, everyone. Just a quick general point, given our compressed agenda, just to make sure the committee is aware that we have included the factual errors documentation, which often elaborates the reasoning behind some of IUCN's positions. IUCN's evaluation of this property is on page 109 of the English version of the evaluation report and page 127 of the French version. Next slide, please. Khangchendzonga National Park is situated in the Himalayan range in northern India in the district of Sikkim and includes the world's third highest peak, Mount Khangchendzonga. The national park has an extremely impressive altitudinal range, a vertical sweep of over 7 kilometres in a relatively small area. Khangchendzonga National Park, next slide please. The scale and grandeur of the Khangchendzonga Massif and the numerous other peaks within Khangchendzonga National Park are extraordinary and contribute to a landscape that is revered across several cultures and religions. The combination of extremely high and rugged mountains covered by intact old-growth forests up to the unusually high timberline and the pronounced altitudinal vegetational zones adds to this exceptional beauty. The park also boasts 18 glaciers, including Zemu Glacier, one of the largest in Asia, and 73 glacial lakes. Next slide, please. Property has one of the highest levels of plant and mammal diversity within the central high Asian mountains. Khangchendzonga is home to nearly half of India's bird diversity, wild trees, orchids, and rhododendrons, and 1/3 of the country's flowering plants. It contains the widest and most extensive zone of krumolts, that's stunted forest, in the Himalayan region. It also provides a critical refuge for a range of endemic, rare and threatened species of plants and animals. IUCN in its report has noted the opportunity to progressively add some of the high conservation value forests in the lower altitudes that are within the buffer zone. Next slide, please. Khangchendzonga National Park is strongly protected under India's National Wildlife Protection Act and enjoys an appropriate management plan. The legal regime, steep terrain and difficult access of the nominated property combine to ensure a very good level of protection. Next slide, please. A complex issue concerning the governance and management of Khangchendzonga National Park is the relationship with local communities. On the one hand, the cultural and spiritual meaning of Khangchendzonga National Park is fully acknowledged, and there appear to be no conflicts in terms of access to cultural sites and resources. On the other hand, the recognition of cultural meaning within the national park does not fully encompass resource use practices, traditional livelihood systems and local knowledge. Next slide, please. Khangchendzonga enjoys a very high degree of natural protection, in particular in the large areas of extremely high and rugged terrain. There is no indication of any serious current threats to this property and its integrity and its OUV. However, there are potential threats such as tourism and climate change. Next slide, please. So in summary, IUCN considers that the nominated property meets both criteria 7 and 10, and that integrity, protection and management meet the requirements of the operational guidelines, whilst noting the need to improve the integration of natural and cultural heritage management and strengthen management effectiveness. Next slide, please. And the draft decision is set out on page 16 of both the English and French versions of Working Document 8B. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you very much. I have been informed that we do not have any draft decision. No, we do not have any draft decision, any amendment on this draft decision. So we can move to the Republic of Turkey. You have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just a minor editorial proposal in the draft decision, paragraph 5, C and D. Would it be possible to change the language man-made into human-made to make it consistent with the operational guidelines? Thank you.
Thank you very much, Turkey. Good point. So I see no objection. So I declare draft decision 40Com 8B 17 adopted with this small amendment. May I congratulate India on behalf of the entire committee for this inscription. Representative of India You have the floor.
Thank you,
For a
Madam
brief
Chair.
2 minutes.
On behalf of the 1.3 billion people from India, I wish to convey our profound gratitude to the World Heritage Committee for the inscription of our first mixed site, the exquisite and exceptional Khangchendzonga National Park. The pristine site, both awesome and majestic, the cradle of Buddhism in the northeast part of India, is a recognition of India's long-cherished traditions and values that exemplify an inextricable link between nature and culture. Very quickly, some statistics. Spread over 1784 square kilometers, the Khangchendzonga National Park includes within its boundaries the third highest mountain peak in the world, incredible variety of flora and fauna, and a diversified wildlife, including the glorious snow leopard. The inscription is also unique as it is an example of the practical implementation of the upstream process initiated by UNESCO and the two advisory bodies, the IUCN and ICOMOS. A heartfelt thank you to the committee and the advisory bodies from India. Thank you very much, Madam Chair.
Thank you very much. Representative of Portugal, you have the floor.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. India rushed ahead, as usually happens, so she didn't give me a chance to allow me to congratulate her again on this outstanding inscription. We agree with the proposed draft decision, emphasizing the importance of fostering the collaboration between India and Nepal concerning the adjoining protected areas. Indeed, considering the vicinity and similarities between the ecosystems of the two protected areas, a future transboundary World Heritage extension of the national park may be envisaged. At least that is what I'm told by our experts. So, congratulations, India, for yet another important achievement.
Thank you very much. I now invite ICOMOS and IUCN to present the next mixed nomination of Pimachiowin Aki, Canada. But before I give the floor to the Secretariat, Mr. Balsamo, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. First of all, is to announce that we received a notification letter of factual errors concerning this nomination. The two factual errors notification, one from the ICOMOS and one from the IUCN evaluation, are to be found on page 36 and 37 of the English version of document INFAID before, and on page 38 and 39 of the French version of the same document. At the same time, I would like to also announce that due to very recent issues related to the governance of the Pimachiowin Aki Corporation, the proponent of this nomination, Canada, wishes to seek support to refer the nomination before the World Heritage Committee at this session, while the nomination has been recommended for inscription as a mixed site by both advisory bodies. And Canada hopes that this decision will allow Pimachiowin Aki Corporation sufficient time to consider the path forward for the organization and this nomination. This request reflects the importance that Canada places on the nature of this nomination and the views of indigenous people. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Balsamo, for providing the committee with this important information. I now give the floor first ICOMOS and then to IUCN.
Thank you, Madam Chair. This is a deferred nomination. At the 37th session, the committee deferred the property in order to allow the state party to explore a fuller understanding of the interrelationship between culture and nature within the property and how this could be related to the convention. It also recommended the state party invite a joint ICOMOS and IUCN advisory mission in order to address those issues. Following that decision, a mission took place to assist the organizers of the nomination and residents through a series of workshops. And this was followed by further advice by the advisory bodies on the structure of the comparative analysis. Pimachiowin Aki encompasses over 33,000 square kilometers of the Anishinaabe ancestral lands. Can we have the next slide, please? Next one. This forest landscape, dissected by free-flowing rivers, lakes, and wetlands, includes portions of land of the 5 First Nations, the Bloodvine River, Little Grand Rapids, Poingasi, Pikanginkum, and Pampulha River First Nation. The Anishinaabe are a highly mobile indigenous hunter-gathering fishing people. They and their ancestors are said to have made use of this and the adjacent landscapes over at least 7,000 years. The Anishinaabe cultural tradition of keeping the land involves honoring the Creator's gifts, observing respectful behavior towards all life, and maintaining harmonious relations with other people. Today, the Anishinaabe are based in 5 small permanent settlements and have use of modern hunting equipment as an adaptation of their traditional practices. But they still maintain strong spiritual associations with the natural landscape. In terms of categories of cultural property, this is a site. It is also put forward as a cultural landscape. The nominated forest landscape includes those portions of ancestral lands that are seen to reflect most strongly the Anishinaabe culture. The revised nomination provides much more detailed information on the cultural traditions of the Anishinaabe, their symbiotic relation with the forest landscape, and the tangible evidence of past and present interactions. The Anishinaabe have been able to retain their traditional culture, including knowledge of and respect for the landscape, and the tangible and intangible resources it provides. Next slide, please. The landscape has shaped their way of life and people, and in turn is embedded in their oral traditions and cosmology. In the winter, sleds drawn by dogs crisscross ancient tracks. Mnemonic narratives connected with travel routes have continued, and elders have begun to document the routes and their associated traditions using GIA mapping. Until a century ago, people dispersed across the landscape, camping near resources. Today, the communities live in permanent settlements, but unused seasonal shelters are important in oral traditions, acting as physical markers of collective histories. Wild rice is cultivated for food, and archaeological evidence suggests this practice dates back at least 1,200 years. In the early spring, the Anishinaabe practice the controlled burning of shoreline wetlands to promote the growth of grass for habitats and animals. Hunting is still a part of their world and is based on a clear symbiotic relationship between people and nature. The landscape is part of the worldview. This attributes animacy to objects in the natural world, giving meaning to people's existence. The first nomination was predicated on the idea of the Anishinaabe communities protecting the natural value of the boreal forest. The revised nomination celebrates the complexities of the community's relationship with the forest, how it shapes their lives and provides them with resources, and how their husbandry ultimately helps to sustain the forest. In terms of outstanding universal value, ICOMOS supports the idea that Pimachiowin Aki is an exceptional example of the way one group of communities manifests the traditions of keeping the land that involves honoring the Creator's gifts and maintaining a respectful interaction with the land and all its life. We consider that criterion 3 and 6 have been justified and that conditions of authenticity and integrity have been met, but will need to be actively sustained. In terms of recommending inscription, ICOMOS recommended the property be inscribed as a cultural landscape on the basis of cultural criteria 3 and 6. ICOMOS, however, respects the wishes of the state party and fully understands that they would prefer a recommendation of referral. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. IUCN, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. IUCN's evaluation of the property is on page 135 of the English version and 143 of the French. My ICOMOS colleague has explained the background to this nomination, and the joint ICOMOS and IUCN advisory mission concluded that criterion 9 is the appropriate natural criterion to be considered for this property. Next slide, please. Oh, we're not on the IUCN presentation. Next slide, please. You've seen the map already. Pimachiowin Aki is a property that encompasses this very vast area. It's in the boreal forest biome within Canada. The property forms the largest network of contiguous protected areas in the boreal shield ecozone. Next slide, please. Property includes abundant waterways with more than 5,600 lakes, larger than 8 hectares, 8,000 smaller freshwater marshes and pools, and nearly 41,000 kilometres of shoreline wetlands that provide habitat for waterfowl, birds, amphibians, mammals and insects. As ICOMOS notes, the Anishinaabe First Nations continue a tradition of living in, using and maintaining the landscape, and the nature conservation values of Pimachiowin Aki are shaped by this long history of interaction. Next slide, please. The exceptional diversity of these terrestrial and freshwater ecosystems fully support unimpeded ecological processes in the forest, such as wildfire, species movements and predator-prey relationships. Pimachiowin Aki's remarkable size, intactness and ecosystem diversity support characteristic boreal species such as woodland caribou, moose, wolf and wolverine, among many others. Next slide, please. IUCN's conclusions on the protection regime which exists within the property are essentially the same as those reached in 2013 and are considered to meet the requirements of the operational guidelines. Virtually all of the property is protected by provincial parks legislation. Some aspects of protection have been strengthened since the original nomination, and the property includes all elements necessary to express its OUV under criterion 9. Next slide, please. The IUCN evaluation considered that the property benefits from a well-designed and functional governance system that through the Pimachiowin Aki Corporation involves all 7 partners in joint consensus-based decision-making. Next slide, please. The property is highly intact and largely free from the adverse effects of past and present development, having never been subject to commercial-scale resource use. Despite its generally good condition, some issues related to tourism, climate change, power lines and road upgrading are noted in the evaluation. Next slide, please. Like ICOMOS, IUCN was pleased to contribute to the reconsideration of this nomination, which in our opinion represents a watershed in recognising the seamless links between nature and culture and in fostering traditional land and resource stewardship. IUCN's evaluation thus recommended to the committee to inscribe Pimachiowin Aki on the World Heritage List under criterion 9, and this recommendation has been developed in close coordination with ICOMOS. However, based on the discussions here in Istanbul, we understand that the State Party considers that additional time is needed on some governance matters that have arisen since the evaluation. IUCN would fully support that need in the event that the committee considers a referral as appropriate to respect the wishes of the State Party in line with those of the First Nation proponents of this nomination. Next slide, please. And our draft decision is on page 19 of the English version of Working Document 8B and page 20 of the French. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you very much. Ladies and gentlemen, as the information provided by the Secretariat before the presentation of the evaluations is very relevant for the conduct of this debate, with the permission of the committee, before opening the debate, I would like to invite the concerned State Party to provide us with more in-depth information about the current situation of this nomination. Is there any objection? I see none. I give the floor to the representative of Canada.
Merci, Madame la Présidente. Comme il s'agit de la première fois que le Canada prend la parole à cette séance, nous aimerions en profiter pour remercier l'État partie de la Turquie de sa chaleureuse hospitalité. Le Canada se joint à toutes les délégations qui ont exprimé leur solidarité avec le peuple turc pendant ces moments difficiles. Madam Chair, Canada wishes to report on the recent developments regarding the Pimachiowin Aki nomination, a proposed mixed site under criteria 3 6, and 9. The Pimachiowin Aki nomination is an exemplary example of the indivisibility of the bonds that exist between culture and nature. The site is managed by the Pimachiowin Aki Corporation, composed of First Nations and provincial government partners. The corporation acts as a coordinating management body and enables the partners to work in an integrated manner across the property to safeguard the outstanding universal value of Pimachiowin Aki. Canada sincerely appreciates the efforts of the World Heritage Centre and advisory bodies, which has resulted in the site being recommended for inscription by the World Heritage Committee. And as my esteemed colleague from the World Heritage Centre indicated, issues related to the governance of the Pimachiowin Aki Corporation have necessitated Canada to support the support of the committee to refer the nomination before it today. This request reflects the importance that Canada places on its relationship with and the views of Indigenous peoples. A decision to refer this nomination would allow the partners of the Pimachiowin Aki Corporation to continue to work to find a solution that would be acceptable to everyone, thereby ensuring that the requirements for protection and management as stated in the operational guidelines are satisfied. Merci, Madame la Présidente.
Thank you very much. The floor is open for the comments of the members of the committee. Representative of Tanzania, you have the floor.
Thank you very much, Madam Chairperson, for giving me the floor. The delegation of the United Republic of Tanzania would like to express its sympathy and solidarity with the government and the people of Turkey. Our condolences to the families that have lost their loved ones, and wish a quick recovery to the injured. We also wanted to assure the distinguished delegate of Lebanon that the comments he made during the discussions on the key works of modern architecture of Lloyd Wright, that small countries and African countries could contribute to the cost of further work on this nomination, have not gone unnoticed. We want to thank him for these comments and to assure him that we have taken note. Madam Chair, indeed, Pimachiowin Aki site is a unique mixed property that deserves to be on the list of World Heritage Sites. This is a sad story to all of us for not inscribing the site. However, United Republic of Tanzania delegate would wish to suggest and accept the support to support the wish of the state party of referring the property to the state party. However, we argue the state party of Canada to allow, streamline, and fast-track these necessary consultations with stakeholders, particularly the indigenous people, so as to submit this nomination in the 41st session of the World Heritage Committee for review and consideration for inscription. We go along with any, we shall be going along with any decision that will change the draft decision. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Representative of Philippines, you have the floor, Madam.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. My delegation congratulates Canada for expressing the preference to refer the inscription of Pimachiowin Aki despite having received a recommendation for inscription from ICOMOS and IUCN. The state party's commitment to securing the free, prior, and informed consent of all of the First Nations concerned is a good example that other state parties can learn from. It is also consistent with the new operational guidelines and the World Heritage and Sustainable Development Policy document on Indigenous peoples. We look keenly forward to the inscription of this property after appropriate consultations with the First Nation have been completed. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you very much, Madam Ambassador, and I would like to give the floor to the representative of Portugal.
Thank you very much. Albeit the need to speed up our work, we believe that examples such as this one need and deserve to be underlined, and this is the reason for me taking the floor. Now, we welcome the extensive work that has been undertaken by the State Party since 2013 and its efforts to follow and implement the recommendations by this committee at its 37th session in Phnom Penh, which has permitted to further strengthening the significant cultural and natural assets as well as the principles and values which are fundamentally associated with this property. Through the State Party, I wish to commend both the First Nation for their community leading role in driving forward this nomination and the State Party itself for taking the concerns expressed by the indigenous populations fully into consideration, which has led to the alteration of the recommendation at the request of Canada. And we do support the draft decision as with its proposed alteration. I thank you.
Thank you very much. I give the floor to the representative of Finland.
Thank you. Madam Chairperson, Finland would like to congratulate Canada and the advisory bodies for successfully completing this complex mixed nomination. However, the State Party have informed us that they are not ready for an inscription yet. Therefore, on the request of Canada, Finland has submitted an amendment to refer the nomination back to the State Party. We extend our sincere appreciation to Canada for their responsible action in this regard. Finally, we would like to point out that this is an extraordinary World Heritage property and the central role of the 5 First Nation communities in its future protection and management cannot be emphasized enough. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you very much. Representative of Turkey.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Very briefly, we also congratulate Canada for submitting a successful nomination file. And having heard their concern, we are of the view that the committee should respect the wish of Canada to refer the nomination in order to give the State Party enough time to resolve issues related to governance. Thank you very much, Madam Chair.
Thank you very much. I give the floor to the representative of Angola.
Merci Madame la Présidente. Deux notes très rapidement. La première, je voudrais féliciter ici donc l'État parti pour le travail qui a été fait. Et considérant le caractère sacré de ces sites, donc on ne peut jamais s'en passer de communautés locales, parce que c'est avec ces communautés qu'on pourra justement assurer la gestion durable des sites et certainement donc le maintien à long terme donc, de la VUE du site. Donc, compte tenu de ces notes, je voulais faire une observation. Je pense même dans nos conclusions générales de cette 40e session du Comité du patrimoine mondial, je pense qu'il serait important qu'il y ait une observation, une note particulière à cette attitude du Canada d'avoir vraiment demandé librement de renvoyer cette inscription et pourtant le site réunit tous les attributs pour être inscrit. Donc je pense que c'est une note forte, ça donne un modèle, un exemple de la mise en œuvre de la Convention de 1972 que les États partis devraient suivre. Je pense que ça mérite des applaudissements, cette attitude du Canada. Je vous remercie.
Thank you very much. I give the floor to the representative of Peru.
Muchas gracias, señora presidenta. El Perú, como otras delegaciones, al analizar la propuesta de nominación, la evaluación de ICOMOS y toda la información proporcionada por el parte, estaba absolutamente de acuerdo con respaldar la inscripción del bien. Sin embargo, la reflexión que ha hecho el Canadá y el acto de responsabilidad que asume para abrir un diálogo con una de las poblaciones originarias que comprende esta nominación, nos muestra un camino muy importante de actitud respecto de mantener, desarrollar, articular los consensos con las poblaciones locales, lo que significa un valor agregado para una nominación. Por esa razón, respaldamos plenamente la propuesta que el propio país parte ha promovido en el sentido de reenviar el texto para que sea objeto de la aprobación correspondiente en el próximo periodo de sesiones. Gracias, señora presidenta.
Thank you very much. I see no more requests for the floor. May I ask our rapporteur, Mrs. Cho, to present this draft decision as amended?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Could we have the draft decision on the screen, please? I would just like to read out the amendments presented by Finland. Starts in paragraph 2, expresses its appreciation for the combined efforts of the State Party, First Nations, and all the authorities and stakeholders involved in the nomination, and for the joint dialogue undertaken with IUCN and ICOMOS in deepening the understanding of nature-culture connections in the context of the World Heritage Convention. Commends the State Party for presenting a revised nomination, which is a landmark for properties nominated through the commitment of indigenous peoples and which demonstrates how the indissoluble bonds that can exist between culture and nature might be recognized on the World Heritage List. Also commends the members of the Pimachiowin Aki Corporation for adopting significant measures to ensure the conservation and protection of the property. Notes that the evaluations by both advisory bodies conclude that the nominated property meets the conditions of integrity and authenticity, has adequate protection and management, and justifies outstanding universal value on the basis of criteria 3, 4, and 9. Recognizing recently identified issues regarding governance and relationships within the Pimachiowin Aki Corporation, refers Pimachiowin Aki Canada back to the State Party to allow it to work with the Pimachiowin Aki Corporation to identify and implement appropriate actions to ensure effective governance and management of the property. Notes that the advisory bodies would be ready and willing to offer advice on the above if requested. Recommends the State Party to give consideration to continue the development of the management plan to address socioeconomic challenges and to promote sustainable livelihoods, including through the development of sustainable tourism and other activities, and giving particular attention to the landscape and its spiritual associations. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mrs. Cho.
I would just, I would just like to go back to the criterion mentioned in this amended draft decision. If I'm not mistaken, it's 3, 6, and 9, but we have 3, 4, and 9 marked. So could we amend it to 3, 6, and 9, please? Thank you. That is all.
Thank you very much, Mrs. Cho. If there is no objection on the draft decision as amended, I see none. I declare decision 40-COM 8B 18 adopted as amended. Ladies and gentlemen, dear colleagues, we will continue with the nominations this afternoon. We have 11 nominations left, so we will try to use our time as precisely as possible, and we will meet at 2 o'clock this afternoon sharp. I adjourn the meeting.